But I'm just going to play a music here before Ajit. I'll hand over everything to you to take the conversation forward. And we are just going to sync our platform on all the places. Just give me a second and hear this music out. All right. It looks like we are live in one, two, three, and four. Yeah, we are live on most of our channels now.
Okay, so uh, today I have with me, Prashant, the founder of Sphron, Ranveer, co-founder of Witness Chain, Alex, co-founder of Exo Labs. My name is Ajit, but I go by Chain Yoda on multiple social handles, and the way it came about is because I've been working in blockchain for a while, and I wanted to look like a wise person. It's not really true, but there's no harm in looking like a wise person. So that's how I got that name. So yeah, today we're going to talk about something that everyone seems to care about, which is who owns your AI. Now, so all of our I guess speakers today work in this area. So they have a lot of insight, and if you go to all of their web pages, whether it's Fron, Exo, or Witness, you will see that they have a great interest in something known as verifiability. We'll find out what that is. So, a question for the speakers without much ado: why do I care who owns my AI? I mean, it seems like fun. I ask ChatGPT a question, it answers the question. If I ask DALI to make a nice meme for me or image for me, it does the job. And now I can even generate videos that are fun to watch. So, I mean, who owns my TV, right? I mean, why do I care who owns my AI? Prashant, do you want to go?
Yeah, I think you just asked the very, very dangerous question to be like answered here. But I think it's one of the interesting question also to answer, right? And everyone, and I'll rather take this question in a very different perspective because it resonates with the Web3 ecosystem and everything what we are building for. If you look at Web3 as such, why we need banking system, like why do we want to remove banking system, right? That basically that question goes till down to that basics of it. The one is like it makes the things more borderless, like people can transmit everything from one place to another place without having any intermediaries. But I think now we all can agree on one more point is no longer true because now governments are involving themselves, so there are going to be certain kind of frictions, but at least that friction is not going to be so much higher. The same is applicable on the AI as well, right? So if we talk about data today, I think I think Meta has done a very great job, and kudos to that. And also Alex, you guys also, because you guys have been covered with the Meta running those open source models, right? So the good part of the Meta is like, even though I don't think like they have published yet like which kind of data sets they have used, but eventually if any of these data which are going to be commercialized, it's our data, right, which is getting commercialized at any given point of time. Like, and then you are making millions, trillions, billions of out of it, right? And the data which we have given you for the past 10 years, 20 years, 15 years, whatever time frame, um, should not we get certain part of that revenue like coming out on your side as well? That's one part. Second part of that entire conversation, I'll also pause here because I can go on and on. I'll ask Ranveer and Alex also to chime in. But the second part, which basically resonates with me a lot, is when I own my data, I control the way it can behave on internet. Imagine, and there is a very classic example of it. If you have ever noticed when you spoken anything in around your phone, ever, and suddenly you will see after a couple, I don't know, like it happens in US and other places, but it happens in India and Dubai and all of these places, where the moment you speak anything near your phone, that ads start showing up on your phone, right? On any social medias. Now that becomes a very critical part when we talk about AI. Now with AI, now you can basically create the entire persona of yours over a digital world and submit it like this is what you are going to be doing. So that is one of the reasons, like you should be owning your AI and you should be like thinking about it very seriously, because a lot of things can be faked, manipulated, and done down the line. And if you don't own it, then you are no longer going to having a right profile in the digital world, which we are working towards to create together. I'll pause here. I'll let Ranveer and Alex also to chime in.
Alex, do you want to go? I've seen your website. It looks like the Revolutionary Manifesto, right? And I know we've been collaborating for a while, so it's all very inspiring. Tell us what's going on with the revolution.
Yeah, thanks for the comments about the website. I designed it myself, so yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, like I mean, when I was looking into this, so like I started by just looking up like, what does ownership even mean? Like I think it's still a bit fuzzy what it means to actually own something. And I tried looking up the definition, and it basically said to own something is to possess that thing. So I looked at possession, and it said to possess it is to own that thing. So it's a bit circular. So it's still, the definition is very unclear what exactly it means, but I can speak to my like personal experience, and it's also, related to the stuff I'm working on now with EXO. And it goes back to like 2011, 2012, around that time where, when I was a young teen on the internet, I would spend most of my time playing a game called RuneScape. I don't know if you know the game, but basically it's like a massively...
I'm not that old. Yeah. So.
Okay,
Keep going.
Yeah, it's basically for people that don't know, right? It's like an online game, multiplayer game where you have a character and you can like collect items, you can do a load of stuff, like stuff that you'd be able to do in the real world, obviously like simplified. And it was a really innovative game in a lot of ways because it had like a full in-game economy. You could like earn money, you can lend money, you could stake, you could even gamble, and basically there was a centralized exchange as well on there. I think for me, like at the time, basically my whole net worth was on that game. So I would, because you could also trade these items for real money. So maybe it was like £3,000 or something at the time. It's just on this game, which is a lot of money back then. And that like 2011 particularly was like a really bad year for me. There was a lot of shit that happened in the game that made me internalize this thing of ownership. Like one of them, I got scammed. So like there was a guy, I used to lend money to like friends, and I lent someone basically like almost my entire net worth, which is like £3,000 at the time. And they basically just like, they gambled it. So they gambled it on a dice game in the game. And then I had no way to get it back, right? Like he just disappeared. And he was on this in part of this clan that I was part of, so I like sort of trusted him there. But like I think that's a really good example where it's like, well, I had literally no way to get that back. So I had this illusion of ownership that like, oh yeah, I own these items in the game, I own this money, but really, like the person who owns that is the person operating the server. It's Jagex, the people who make the game. And like I got banned as well that year, so like I just basically lost everything, and they could just do this whenever they wanted. They can decide like who gets what items and stuff. So often I would have this illusion of ownership, but like in reality it was all owned by the people who make the game. And I think that was, and then in 2017 when I like saw Ethereum, it like immediately clicked for me, because I was like, oh man, this is the thing that I needed back then. Like if all those items and stuff existed on chain, and you could like program, like a loan or something, and there's a very clear concept of ownership, right? There's a very clear like, whoever has the keys to a wallet owns that thing, and you can program, like you have this like ability to coordinate ownership as well, right? With smart contracts. So you can say, I give you this thing and you have to pay it back by this date, and that's all governed by code, and no one can stop that. There's no Jagex, there's no game owner there that can just decide, hey, we're not going to enforce this, or we're going to take your items away. It's literally, it's because of it's actually decentralized, it's unstoppable. There's no single server you can shut down. That's like a very critical property for like any kind of ownership or coordination of that ownership. Obviously, then you also have like legal systems and stuff like that. But at the time in that game, there was no legal system or anything like that. But I think from my perspective, like this is kind of how I internalize like ownership, and I'm interested in the blockchain thing.
Yeah, that's how I feel. It's in crypto. That's how we feel about the government too, which is okay, you own it until the government decides that you don't anymore. I think there's a word for it, which is eminent domain. There's some legal definitions in the US.
It's in the edge cases, right? It's like most of the time, I think a really important point is just like it's the illusion. You can get into this illusion of ownership, right? But it's only in the edge case that you realize like who really owns this thing. And like the magical thing about the blockchain is that like you have.
So we'll get to the solution side of this, right? Sorry to pause there, but I think the question was why do we need to? Who cares who owns your AI? And I guess the answer so far seems to be you don't, because we're going to make a bunch of decisions using AI, and all of our AI will be integrated into everything we do. So if we don't know what the AI is doing and why it's doing it and who is actually calling the shots, then we can get what the crypto people call rug pulled, right? So as in, AI might move your money, AI might decide who you get married to, and AI might
may issue a wrong marriage certificate. That could be a
exactly
very
or shit post while you're asleep and get you fired. So we don't want that, right? So anyways, so Ranveer, where do you come into this? Because you're building something really cool. It's called Witness Chain, and you guys have been very focused on verifiability. But tell us more. What is Witness Chain, and what's the connection of Witness Chain to AI, and who owns it?
Yeah, so I think broadly there are multiple dimensions to this. At Witness Chain, what we're building is essentially a watchtower network. Think of it as a way of gathering information, observing information about the world from various perspectives. And this is very core to, like, if you want to make an assessment of whether something happened or not in the world, right? Or what are the attributes of physical assets in the real world. If you want to determine the truth of it, you need to observe it from different perspectives. And that's what the Watchtower Network does. In the end, like, we achieve at a consensus that, hey, this is what happened. Like, this AI model computed correctly. The process happened at this particular location. An asset is sitting at this location. So anything in the physical world, including computation, needs verifiability. And that verifiability requires that thing to be observed by a variety of different perspectives. By that, I mean by different watchtowers distributed globally. And that's where Witness Chain comes in. Now, how you observe it, how do you process it, all of that has a lot of component that would utilize AI, right? But more pertinent to this discussion, I would like to say that this whole discussion is ownership good or ownership bad. I would like to make a very general statement. We don't know if it's good or bad, but a world in which you own AI is a superset of the world in which we live right now, right? So if you own AI, you can always decide to okay, I don't like to own AI. I like Google to own my models or whatever. I can give my rights to it, right? So a nation in which you can own land or own IP is strictly has more degrees of freedom than a nation where you can't do either of that. And we have been living in that sort of a nation throughout. And we just want to build a new nation that can allow us those more.
Yeah, that's a really interesting. Can I chime in on that?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, like I want to push back on something. So I agree with you. I agreed with you on the point that it's not good or bad, right? But like having that degree of freedom is also sort of potentially, like in the case of AI, maybe a bit scary, because like, let's say for example, you maximize the degrees of freedom, right? So that, let's say a human, right? No one, like you could say the human owns themselves, right? It's a bit of a weird thing to say, but with an AI, that could be a similar thing, right? Where it doesn't really have an owner, and it's like, let's say it just exists on some blockchain or something. Like, who's to say like who is the owner of that? That to me is like really scary. If you just have these like agents that you unleash and there's no way to stop it because no one really owns it, then more degrees of freedom there is really scary. So I think, but this is the thing, right? Well, I don't want to go too much into the solution side of things right now, but I just wanted to make that point that like, like more degrees of freedom is also scary in this case.
But
so-
Alex, on that one, it's like just few more points. Ultimately, if you see that the layering of this entire architecture, what we have just spoke about, and what Ranveer has also told, is like all this layering drills down to the bottom of hardware, right? So now the question comes is, if we can control the hardware, or if we can allow those hardwares to be restrictive enough in different jurisdictions and following different norms, via some orchestration layer built around it, then it can be solved, right? Is it like it can be done? Like,
Well,
then there's
it
no way
depends,
to
right?
unleash
Because
this.
that is if a lot of the deep end stuff that's being worked on is trying, well, it's literally in the name, right? Decentralized physical infrastructure. So the idea is that this is actually decentralized at some point, and through decentralization there's no way to stop it, right? So it can run on hardware and there can be all this hardware around, but it's just like the
I think I slightly disagree on that point. Truly decentralization means like people are allowed to do whatever they wish to, but as a network, you are allowed to stop certain things at a given point of time. So, for example, let's say if I'm executing a certain transaction, even Ethereum in that case, even L2s or whatever we talk about, the moment you want to offload that, you either have to go to, as of now today, you can go to exchange. The moment you withdraw it or do anything, you can always be blocked at the given point of time. So it can be done. So that is, I think, DeepN becomes much more robust when it comes to streamlining these kind of governance around the agents on the hardware and orchestration engine side. I think I'm still putting a thought around. I don't know what should be what could happen when everything is unleashes its whole potential. But as far as the solution design goes, because we look at the hardware on the very solution perspective and the very bottom layer of it. And if that bottom layer is not directly exposed, let's say if the kernel is not coming to the network directly, then it is still possible to orchestrate and stop the things on the software orchestration layer itself.
It's
but
possible.
I think
it is definitely possible, right? But you know, like, let's say you put a smart contract on Ethereum, right? Like, how do the code is law there, right?
Guys,
Whatever the code.
I'm gonna stop you guys from nerding out. So I think earlier we had one discussion about something that most people don't give a fuck about, which is who owns your AI, and now we have two things which most people don't give a fuck about, which is smart contracts and who owns your AI. So maybe let's stick to the stuff that we don't give a fuck about, right?
Yeah.
And so okay, so right now, who owns my AI right now? I mean, is it Sam Altman? I mean, or is it Joe Biden? I mean, who owns it now? Is it me?
I think it's very unfair to take any names here.
It depends,
Like,
right? Depends what you mean, because there's many aspects to it, right? There's the
I'm
data.
just scared to live in Dubai.
What is
Prashant.
AI?
There's the training data. There's like,
Okay.
the
Just
models.
walk me through that. Who owns my AI today?
So most AI that people are using are behind these closed source APIs like OpenAI, right? And how that works is there's one organization that takes care of a lot of things. So OpenAI will source the data, usually from like public internet, but also there's a lot of like private sources now as well, because we're running out of public data. And they'll use that data to train a model. And that model is also something that they own. So the model itself lives on their servers. They protect that because it's, very valuable asset. And they also host the model. These things don't have to be the same person, but that's just how it works today. And yeah, you if you want to use, like ChatGPT or something, you're going through OpenAI's API that they operate, that they run, and using their model that was trained on data that they sourced.
Okay, so when I use ChatGPT, bottom line is they own everything. I mean, it's not my data. They get to choose what data is used to train these models. how
Kind
that
of.
data
Like
is
there's,
collected.
there's some interest. Like it's really fuzzy right now, right? Because like
Yeah.
if you look at the training data, where they sourced that from, there's some lawsuits going on right now, right? About like who exactly who is the rightful owner of that data, and it gets very messy because it's not like they're like indirectly selling the data, right? Because they have all this data that they then train this statistical like thing on, and then that thing is the end
So
product.
we don't know what's in the matrix either, right? I mean, it's like the matrix. It's literally a matrix. I mean, it's a bunch of numbers, and we don't know how they got to them. I
Yeah,
think
and the
they tell us
signs,
some
right? You might
signs.
ask it like
Yeah.
certain questions, and then the signs that, oh, this is probably trained on this data set, but there's no like right now there's no clear like link there between the training data and the outputs of the model.
Okay.
I think this is
Which
really interesting.
means that we don't know, we can't explain how the data connects to what the model is telling us when we ask a question, right?
Yeah,
As in, why is it answering why is it telling me what's it telling me? So for example, if I ask, is Alex a nice guy, and can I trust him? And then the model will say, no, we don't know, because I don't think so, because the model went to the website and said this guy wants open source AI, so yeah, no, we want and then it's not Sam Altman's AI anymore. So okay, but we don't know why the model is answering. So that wasn't a great example, but why the
I
model
think
is answering.
this one is
The
actually
model
good.
might have biases, right? So maybe the model knows Alex works in open source AI. So
Yeah, like I think this is actually a really good example. Like in terms of I think it does come down to ownership in the end. It's just like you have so many. So like because this model is this black box, right? That you just put some input in, which is in the case of a language model, is some text, and you get some output out. There's a lot of, to bring the word up again, there's a lot of degrees of freedom there for what you can do. It's not like some storage API or something, right? Where there's a clear agreement that I'm going to store this piece of data and it shouldn't be changed. In the case of a model, there's so many things you can change. It's a statistical black box, right? So there, the question becomes like, who gets to decide,
yeah,
which ways to influence this model, and that comes down to like you can influence culture, you can influence truth through that. A really good example is if you go to different models that are trained by different organizations and you ask it who invented the airplane, like who built the first airplane, it will give you different answers depending on the model.
okay,
And
that's
if
amazing.
you so
Yeah.
it just comes down to what is the truth, right? The person who owns this model, who controls the model, they get to influence what is true, and
This
what
is
is
okay. So that's a little bit scary, right? Because I mean, remember, Alex, you and I, have lived in London for a while, and and we went through Brexit, and that was influenced by Cambridge Analytica, and them essentially using the data to influence the Brexit referendum. Then we saw Trump's election, and the data was used to influence, but that was slightly different. But this is even more scary, because if this type of software gets integrated into everything, and we have no transparency, no visibility of why the model is doing what it's doing, or I forget why it's doing, but if there are inherent biases, or someone has actually manipulated the outputs of the model, as in they trained the model to respond in certain ways, then every person might start rioting, because the model integrated in their iPhones actually answers a question, and that says all the crypto people are bad people or something, and then there is a riot
interest.
against the people.
I
Yeah, so
think
we don't
that
have that.
I think the interesting thing will be when we have the questions of around the regional boundaries, and ChatGPTs or anything asking that. Just ask those questions in different countries, and that is when you will figure it out. Just ask like, where does the boundary of this country ends? Just check it out, and
Okay.
it's a checkout for everyone. Just go and check it out. You'll find a very
That's
different
such a
and interesting
contentious topic in India and Pakistan, right? There's many contentious topics in India and China,
I
Armenia.
no,
That's the
it's a
problem in half
contentious
the world.
topic everywhere. I think in
Everywhere.
US also,
That's right.
US also,
Uh,
in Britain
Yeah, I
also,
think
in all the
Canada is
places.
not even a real country, so obviously
Yeah.
it's a contentious topic there. And the Scottish people might have their own views in a few years. Who knows? I'm not going to go into that direction. So it's a Ranveer witness, right? I mean, that's a very interesting approach to essentially proofs and verifiability, which by in plain English, as in why, what happened, and what actually happened, and what was the chain of consequences or side effects or actions that led to that. So what sort of things can be witnessed in an AI context, right? So in the whole model training or in the inference as in decision making context, what can you witness and have sort of mathematical or cryptographic proofs for?
Definitely. So I think there are multiple components to AI, right? Where you start from data collection, model training, just to say the core data collection, model training, model inference, right?
And compute. Whether we're going to go there, but
Yeah, training and inference would be part of the compute, right? So how do you trust the data itself that's coming to a network, right? We have seen a lot of approaches in the deep-in space where you have networks that are specialized in collecting data. Think of any IoT network, think of a network that connects to your car, things like that. Now, in order to trust the data, you have to trust, at this point, you have to trust the device and inherently trust the manufacturer if it's actually manufacturing the correct device, right? To make sure that it's the data collected is true, you need to trust the asset collecting the data. And in order to trust the asset collecting the data, you need to trust that it's a real asset and not a virtualized asset. Now, how do you verify that it's a real asset? Well, you run a suite of our proofs. So right now, what we have deployed in our system is, I think, two core parts of these proofs are proof of location and proof of bandwidth, which is a proof that you are connected to the internet. A composed version of these proofs can verify whether a device is a real device collecting data or a virtualized device which is just sitting on a server generating fake data. And once you bring trust in an asset, you bring the trust in the data collected by that asset. From then, you move to the next two phases, which is training and inference, which is, well, in those two phases, you are essentially verifying whether your compute is happening correctly and in a decentralized manner, right? So verification of compute has multiple ways you can verify it. The most expensive is ZK. Just remove ZK for this for a while. The way you verify it is either you do sampling, you rely on a very decentralized network to do your compute and so on. Now, how do you verify that the network is decentralized? Again, you want to prove that the nodes performing this compute are not all in the same data center. They are not all owned by AWS or owned by one operator, right? And you can prove this again by proof of location. Proof of location is one of my favorite proofs on our stack because it allows you to be used in a variety of these use cases. And to verify whether compute happened correctly, well, you rely on our third and one of our core proofs, which is proof of diligence, which makes sure that compute happened correctly in an optimistic system. And there were nodes which are actually watching whether compute happened correctly or not. So by controlling these like core parts of the stack, now we haven't discussed like how, this is directly tied to the compute infra itself. Like we plug ourselves on the compute infra, for example, with Spheron to verify attributes that compute infra, attributes like location and
That's
connectivity.
very cool. Yeah. So you kind of have these, the protocol or a systematic way of creating these physical proofs or sort of proof of some compute or another location or something like consensus on physical state, as you guys call it, which is a very interesting. So are these sorry to nerd out for 1 minute, but I'll just take a one-word answer. Is this cryptographic or cryptoeconomic? Because it's Eigenlayer launch day, so I had to ask.
I think both are
possible, right?
Both are tied. Both are tied together.
So I'm not going to go into that debate. That's for another chat. But yeah, I have my own views on it. And
But you cannot have crypto. I mean, yeah, I mean, you
yeah,
need some cryptography to enable crypto.
yeah. I mean, sure, if you throw enough money at something, you can break cryptography, right? So in theory, so there is a connection there. But yeah, it's
So
such
it relies on a large crypto economic security. So I wouldn't say like it's the same way, ZK is purely cryptographic, whereas this is anything outside of that is like crypto economic.
I mean, there is. We're not going to go there, as I said, and we keep going there because it's so tempting to get nerd out on that topic. So Prashant, compute, right? Why do we care about compute? Because okay, I see why we care about who owns the data. I see we care about who owns the model, right? And fine tuning and reinforcement learning, all that stuff. Why do we care about who owns the compute?
Oh man, so that's the core of it, right? So
And
whatever
that's
you
a question
do,
for Alex also, because I know you guys are both working on related problems. Sorry, go ahead.
yeah. So if you kind of look at whatever discussion we had, everything right around who owns the AI, right? And ultimately, all of these AIs or data or anything has to be processed somewhere, and that somewhere of everything bottom line is the compute, and that is where everything just goes around. So let's say if I want to run an LLM model, if I want to run small agents or like whatever I wish to do, like everything has to just go by that compute. And I always go with this understanding is like there is a concept of, and there are two kind of, and it's a very provocative, it can be like it's a very different one, the example which I'm going to take, but it is a true example which exists currently in existing as it is. If you look at the world today, so there are a lot of polarization happening in the world as such, right? And all of this polarization, what it creates its own dynamics and power dynamics and everything. In this world where we live, the power dynamics is all around the digitization, right? So how much compute power, how much bandwidth power, how much data power you own. So today, China, India, all of these nations are more data power, like so we have a lot of data which is getting produced by billions of people every day, right? And if you look at this entire digitization, the core part of this is again it's a compute. If you look at the war which happened recently, broke out in Russia, Ukraine, whatever happened there, right? But ultimately, the people who controlled those compute, it was AWS, GCP, Azure, and all of these folks, and they just pulled out right in the night. At the moment all of this happened, the US came in and they said like, okay, you know what, guys, just take it out. But eventually, who got impacted with all of these things? It's the normal people like who are living their life uh, relying on those compute. Like they are going to be sending me this request whenever I'm going to ask this, they are going to be sending me that request when I'm going to be asking this. So that becomes the foundational problem, right, to kind of solve for any nation. That's first thing. Now owning a compute becomes much more critical part when we talk about AI again, right? So let's say I live in some X country, or let's say in US or some other place. Now there is a norm in the US where you cannot send the data out of the US to perform certain computation, right? Now this compute is going to be either has to happen inside the US, or if the moment you send it out, it's all gone. Now in US again, we have to identify who all are the bigger owner of this compute, and then you are going to send that data to those owners, and those owners are mostly the data centers, the bigger ones, and the cloud, which is AWS and GCPs and Azures and all of those folks, right? And that is where that owning and the critical part of the hardware comes into the picture. Is like how we can enable community. When we talk about community data, then we also have to talk about community run nodes, community run hardwares, community run all of those stuff. Then only it is going to be like truly owned by you, not a like, I think Alex, you have put the very right point there around the gaming one. Today also exists the same way. If you look at most of the blockchains today, I think now it is, there are a few blockchains that shall not take the names, but most of their servers are running on some two cloud vendors. The day they go and shut them down, their entire blockchain will halt, right? So essentially we are living in the same world. Like even if you are running a blockchain, we are running these servers somewhere, and those are in the centralized places. How can community can come into the picture? And that is where that owning of the hardware, owning of the compute part basically comes into the picture and plays a very vital role.
The same question to you. Why do we care who owns our compute? Who owns the compute for AI? I mean, how is that related to it? Isn't it just chips and machines and computers? How does it matter?
It does matter.
No, that's for Alex, as in,
Oh,
yeah.
Well, at the end of the day, right, the AI has to run somewhere, right? So, I mean, there's all these different stages, right? Like Ranbir was saying, there's the data collection, training, and the inference. But if we just focus on the inference, right, you have this model, and you want to run it somewhere, like it has to run on some hardware somewhere, right? So, and you know, then the question is like, okay, whose hardware is it going to run on? Because there is a very clear chain of ownership when it comes to the hardware itself. So like, you know, there's very clear framework for that. And I think for now, like, I mean, the simplest thing is that, you know, if you're running a model, it just runs on your own hardware. Like that solves a lot of these problems around you know, like who can shut it off. Well, you know, if it's running on your own computer, you can just unplug it. That, you know, that's something you can't do if it's running in a data center somewhere. If it's not doing what you want it to do, you can change it. Like you have full control over it. So it's it seems like the simplest solution right now, if you can, is just to run it on your own hardware. And then I think longer term, you know, like being able to, like, you know, basically create kind of like an inference, a decentralized inference kind of network is really interesting, because there you don't necessarily need to have the hardware yourself, but you get some of the same properties where, you know, you can still own something that runs on there. You can still have control of it. It just doesn't really exist today. Like there's a lot of like very hard problems that need to be solved there. And yeah, I mean, one of the things is just, well, if you want to get, well, I don't want to get too technical again, but if you know, verifiability has an overhead, right? So if you run on your own hardware, you don't need any of that, because you can literally know exactly what's going on there.
But there is also an economic dimension to it, right? As in now, I mean, most people just use ChatGPT, and it's really expensive to train the damn thing. I mean, it's you know, there's I hear a lot of new news about how everyone is using NVIDIA chips. NVIDIA is making a lot of money. You know, there are like 4 companies or 5 companies that can train these large language models, and everyone else has to kind of rely on them. So we are kind of a bit dependent on, you know, like 3 or 4 companies for compute, and then only like another 4 or 5 companies, and mostly US based, can buy that compute. And then Joe Biden and hopefully not the next president wants to control who has access to this. So it's a little bit, are we going to be like beholden to American values, American politics, all of that? I mean, what's going on here? I mean, you know, sure, the Brits are friends of the US, but we particularly don't like being controlled by our, you know, by the colonies. So what's going on here?
Yeah, the inertia is definitely pulling us there, right? So, you know, right now there is basically only one way to train the most capable AI systems, and that is by building a giant NVIDIA GPU cluster with, you know, very high interconnect. So you put them all in the same place, and yeah, you can. That's basically the only way to scale right now. So
yeah, I was hoping you would say EXO solves this, or some, you know, meme like or Sfron solves this, or some combination of you 3 guys solves it.
Well, it's really hard, right? Because, like I said, the inertia is pulling us in that direction. There's so many, you know, there's millions of man hours that have gone into, you know, this specific way of training models. Mm-hmm. It's not the only way, though, and there is some really interesting research in this direction of sort of, you know, being able to leverage other kinds of compute, being able to leverage them over a global network rather than one that is all in the same place. And I think, again, that is a really good long-term ambition, and where we should definitely go towards. Because, I mean, look at it from a country's perspective as well, right? Other countries, like you said, you know, they're beholden to the US right now. And if you just extrapolate the current trend, it seems like AI is basically, even if you don't talk about AGI or anything, right, which is still very a loose concept. If you just talk about the current trend, AI is basically a very powerful tool for augmentation. So anything that you already do, it literally adds IQ points to that thing. So if I'm coding, having Claude there with me and being able to use, an AI IDE, it
Yeah.
literally makes me like, 10 times more productive than I would be without it. Now, obviously, every country is going to want to use those tools, right? They want to give them to their citizens so that they're competitive on a global scale. Now, who owns those tools? Well, right now, the most capable AI systems are just, the ones that are from US companies like OpenAI. So I think longer term, these countries are going to need to, just as they diversify their commodity supply chains, right? They're going to need to diversify the AI supply chain, and they need, like they don't having that single point of failure as NVIDIA is really
Yeah,
good.
that's a little bit of a indeed. The Nvidia is one, then there is the whole semiconductor thing, and all of that is getting done out of Taiwan. So that is another, as we watch, Iran is sending missiles into Israel. For all we know, in 5 years there might be a battle for AI and the chips that control. I think there's a book called Chip War. By the way, I strongly recommend reading it. It's a fantastic piece of work on how the semiconductor supply chain works and what it means for AI and what it means for the future, right? So Taiwan is such a flashpoint, and then we might end up disrupting the whole AI supply chain, and the next thing we know. So how are you guys looking to solve this? As in, it's a bit sad that none of you have a token, so I can't really fill it, but I think beyond that, you guys have some real solutions to the problem. So early stage, but what are the ideas? Prashant, what are you trying to do? The same question for Ranveer and then Alex.
Yeah, sure. So on our side, I think the core problem which we wanted to always solve is how we can, even if we look at not the training perspective, but fine tuning and inferencing, we are at a level where we can run these models on the devices, and those are the MacBooks, the Linux-based devices, which has around 4090s, 4060. We have also tested on some of the lower models of GPUs as well, some of the existing models, and they work flawlessly. Now, the way we want to get all of these things exposed to the end users is the question now. Is like, how do we want these kind of machines to come into the existence so that they can be utilized at their own full capacity? And that is where at Spheron we have been, like, past couple of months, years, you can say years now, we have been working on to understand is like how that model should look like. So we came up with a very interesting model of like connecting and forming we call it at Spheron, it's called decentralized compute network states. What does that basically means? That basically means like we have different network states which are living at different geolocations or different places, and those network states has their own individual people who are running the small devices. It can be your laptop, it can be your gaming laptop, any of the systems, and then you connect that to nearest data center of yours, which has, it doesn't require to be a data center, but it has to be someone who is capable of having good amount of bandwidth, like 1 Gbps or something like that, so that you connect with them, and then you may essentially form a cluster of these nodes which forms around it, and then you can start supplying the like workload on these edge computes. So that is how we are kind of looking at Spheron to kind of solve this challenge of computation at scale, and bringing these compute which are idle now to deploy any kind of AI workloads. Now, the beauty of what we have built so far, it allows you to do different workloads, and this is one of the interesting thing which we have done. And what that basically means, like, you can deploy a dedicated AI agent on top of it, you can do inferencing on top of it, you can also do clustering on top of it. We are currently working and looking into is like how we can also integrate the clustering mechanism which XO has also built, Ray has built, in terms of the like teams who have been like working on that clustering mechanism over the internet protocol, not the LAN one. We are currently working and seeing is like how it can be done. If that can be done, then you can essentially form an entire nest of cloud at any specific geolocations, and make the inferencing and fine tuning way faster than it exists today. And as Alex was also mentioning, that there are teams, and I would love to call out those teams as well. Like, so there is a team called Dialoco, Galore, Laura, and all. Like, there are multiple all of these teams who has been doing a great research around like how you can reduce the memory usage on these lower end devices and kind of achieve the inferencing at a faster scale. So that's what our focus point is at Spheron, to bring and allow build this super deepened, basically. It's a deepened network, build a super deepened compute network where we can allow anyone to contribute this existing idle capacity and allow end users who are AI researchers, members, users, business owners, or whatever, deploy their open source models. Or basically, we are promoting open source model because proprietary models requires other compliances. You can deploy open source models at 1/10 of the cost which you might be paying today to the cloud. So that is what how we are kind of bringing that idle capacities to the forward to the end users.
Fair enough. That's pretty cool. So, Ranveer, what's the witness angle to this?
Yeah, as we discussed, right? To own AI, you have to own various components of that AI.
Yeah, and in the context of compute.
Yes. So in the context of compute, what's important is making sure you are compliant, decentralized, and correct at the same time, right? And in order to do all of that, you need an orchestration framework, like what Prashant was mentioning, which has the correct view of what the underlying compute architecture, what underlying compute nodes are. And to verifiably get that correct view, they can use our stack to prove those attributes to get that correct view. And from that, like once you have that correct view, you can now coordinate with other DeepIns in the AI supply chain, other DeepIns that have storage, that have data, that have communication of this data, because all of them can now trust one another, since all of their assets have proven their capabilities and service.
I think one more thing which I think Ranveer has forgot to add, and I'm going to add that on his behalf, is while we are going to be forming these decentralized compute network states, we need to ensure these locations are accurate enough. The reason being because if those locations are not accurate enough, the hopping of those data packets is going to be like too much, and it won't be able to handle like faster inferencing. So in order to perform our network at a scale, we need to ensure these attributes are properly been defined. So let's say if I'm saying we are going to form a network state in here in Dubai, then we have to ensure the nodes at the smaller computer, let's say Chinitha, you have a laptop right in Dubai, for example, you want to connect it. Now, how I'm going to supposed to know is like you are the person who is dialing in from Dubai, right? So to add that, and once we add that feature into the Spherons, then it becomes much more robust. Then in reality, like nobody's faking here any of the locations, and then you can open source it, and you can build a game theory around it. You can do tons of other things to ensure like the high quality, even the retail quality hardwares becomes much more robust when they are utilized at scale.
Cool. Alex?
Yeah, so EXO is to relate it to what we've been saying. It is actually, it's a compute backbone for user-owned AI. So what it does, it takes all your existing, devices like your phone, your tablet, your MacBooks, whatever it is, and they all have powerful GPUs, but they're not used. So it forms them into a network that is your own personal AI cluster. So you don't need to set up, like some NVIDIA GPU thing. You can just run it across your existing devices. And this is really interesting for, two main groups of users. One is just like enterprises who want to run AI on premise because they might have some like proprietary data they don't want to send to OpenAI. And they don't want to have to hire a team to set up this NVIDIA thing. And the other one is more like consumers. For now, it's mainly hobbyists that are just kind of curious about this, but eventually, like as I mentioned, there's going to be more and more augmentation from AI, and we will just merge. We're already kind of merged with AI, right? Like your phone is basically extension of yourself, and it would just continue to be the case. And where you can basically leverage your existing hardware to. I don't know what happened to
Your camera.
your camera chain here. I could just see your head now.
Yeah. Sorry. I'm right
Yeah,
here.
basically
Sorry.
enterprises, consumers. That's the two
Okay.
groups.
Different camera. Right.
Oh yeah, this one has a wider view.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Yeah, there is this really awful situation right now that I think hopefully will resolve itself. So thank you for that insight. Prashant, you have anything to share with us today? Anything
Oh
exciting
yes,
going on at Swaran?
yeah. So that is what which we are also be like. There are multiple things. But the one thing which we are very excited about is, and that is where we are going to be working very closely with the teams who are also here, and there are a lot of teams who we are already started working with, is around this. The first stage of forming this decentralized compute network state is to allow these smaller machines to kind of come together, and that first part of that machine is a fizz node. We call it a fizz node, or you can aka it's a community node, which anyone in their own laptops, their own machines, from today onward, they can go ahead and install on their machines, and they can start running and start contributing their idle compute capacity to somebody who is really looking forward to it.
So I can just install some software on my laptop and then it'll start doing things for AI. Like, I mean, that's it.
Yeah, it will start doing things for AI, and it will also start doing things for a lot of us. Like, let's say I want to, so let's say change over that at this point of time in the night or in the evening, you're not using all the 16 cores of yours, right? Most likely, if you're not a coder,
I don't know how
if you
many
have a
cores.
if you have a if you have a MacBook device, then I can bet you're not using your 100% capacity
Like
of it.
I'm not using most of my brain, so that's okay. Mm, okay.
Yeah, so imagine the same way, like if I can have access of your brain the same way
Yeah.
as the compute,
Yeah.
and I can access your idle compute capacity and do my work. And very classic example of this, yesterday I was doing one small recording, and I kind of got landed into this problem statement is, most of the time we run most of the things in our machine, right, as a coder or anyone, right? So but what happens,
Okay. And Prashant, I think you jammed over there. So clearly, there's some software running on his machine. So, anyways, uh,
Just on that point that you're making, Prashant, I think there's a really interesting like synergy between these inference products like EXO and what you're building, because like you said, there's so much underutilized compute, and typically if you're running your own inference cluster, it's very spiky workload, right? You'll do
yeah,
some inference and then it goes to 100% capacity for like a small amount of time, and then it goes to zero again. So there's all this like compute that is mainly idle that can be used for other useful things. So if there's, infrastructure doesn't exist right now where you can just plug in, your hardware to some kind of network that can leverage that compute.
yeah, so that is what exists today, and this is what we are kind of doing with the fizz node as well. Is now you can basically resell, or you can say sell your idle compute capacity without worry about, like, hey, you know what will happen? Is it going to just serve only one node? Is it going to serve this specific workload? No. The what fizz node basically brings on the table for everyone, it accepts any kind of workload. It can be AI workload, it can be normal compute workload. I want to do X plus Y, right?
uh,
Do I really need to lace out these
okay.
things? You can do anything on top of
Yeah,
these
but mostly you expect these days AI to dominate more and more of that, right? So Nvidia started out as a gaming
yeah,
company, then they were doing Ethereum mining, and it turns out that most of Nvidia's stuff is now being used for either kids playing games, or
yeah.
in fact, more and more like 70-80% of that compute is going to go into AI. So that's very very cool. But why should I do it? I mean, are you going to pay me, Prashant?
Oh man, so there are that's part
Well,
of
you
crypto
want me to
economics,
give
right?
you my computer for free? What's going on here?
No, no, no,
Right.
not at all. So that's where our crypto economics and the bootstrapping phase and everything which comes into the picture, right? So the first thing which we are going to be doing is the point system, which is, again, it's a weighted system. The weighted system, which is designed to give you certain things, which I cannot speak over these things because of legal reasons. But over the time, what will happen is, like, you will able to earn this, farm these points. That's one part of it. The second part of it, which is the interesting part, we just don't believe in point system. If anyone leases out your system, let's say today or tomorrow, they
Yeah.
are going to give you straightforward that USDT, USDC, Ethereum, Bitcoin, whatever you want to accept
Yeah.
on those phase nodes. So you just don't have to rely on us like as a point system and you're just farming. No. If anyone is deploying anything, they are going to pay you also for those services. So that's basically differentiate us a lot. And the reason we wanted to kind of build this kind of system is because today, if you look around, like, everyone just wants everyone to kind of farm the point, but in reality, the real value accrual doesn't happen at scale. But with the system which we are building, from day one, we have this payment system, fiat system, and all of this system which are getting built around it, so that even though you share your laptop for 5 hours, 1 hour, 2 or 3 hours, somebody is going to pay you for that. if it is
Yeah.
if they have leased it out.
Yeah.
So that's the beauty. Apart from the liveness reward of Spheron, of course, so which is
Okay.
also going to be there.
That sounds pretty cool. So Fiznode earn rewards by providing your computer. Then okay, Fiznode, install Fiznode, check your setup. I mean, this looks cool. And then okay, and what's the NFT for?
Oh, NFT is just to it's just showcase. It's like you are a part of the network. That's one thing.
I'm gonna get
Second
token.
thing,
You don't have to say that. Right? Not on video. Yeah. Okay.
so and the second thing is with those NFTs, you are also going to be getting a very special role on our Discord, which is called Fizzers. Tomorrow we'll sending you something also around the Fizzers, like why we have kept the name Fizzer and all of those stuff. But
Yeah.
there's a special role on Discord called Fizzer, and you'll be able to uh, play around with multiple campaigns which we are running, and those are going to be dedicated to all those Fizzer like who have been running their node. Now the beauty of everything,
But when I'm
instead of
working, you're not gonna. When I'm working, your thing will not take over my computer, right?
no, not at all.
Okay. Good.
So you have all the capacity, so you can go and say, hey, you know what, I'm not going to give you the compute for this point of time. You can always put that, and then you can also put is like I'm only going to share you 4 threads of my CPU, or 4 threads of my computer, or 8 threads of my computer,
I'm
or
not that technical, mate. I work in crypto, but keep going.
yeah, but but imagine it's like you have a brain, right? So you
Oh, yeah?
can only do
Okay.
you can
Right.
you can only do certain point of time task with your brain at a parallel.
Yeah, I've been accused
So
of that. Right. Keep going.
so that parallelization allows it basically us
Okay.
to restrict certain limitations there.
Amazing. So this is very exciting. Congratulations on the launch of your Fiznode product. I'm really going to check it out. It looks really exciting. I'm going to download it, install it. And the way to go do that is to go to, what is this, isfron.network. And I say start earning, and then it gives me a bunch of directions. Continue with, I just log in very easily. And then it allows me to download and install. That sounds pretty cool. So yeah, I'm going to check this out. And, there's there's a lot of inflation, so no harm in earning some free money. Well, it's not really free money, but passive income or whatever they call it. It's like buying an apartment in Dubai and renting it out, except this time it's your computer. And it sort of saves me from the overlords, the AI overlords as well. So, doing God's work. Prashant, thank you for that. And Alex and Ranveer,
One more
really
thing,
excited.
one more thing I'll add on before we can go into that. The coolest part about the Fiznode, it also solves one of the biggest concern around energy utilization of the data centers.
Oh, yeah.
And the decentralization around it. So if you kind of look at very high level, most of the regions in US also where these data centers are currently running, they are consuming like a lot of energy, and they are creating it's essentially it's a pollution, right? Which we are now.
Yeah,
the only way
someone
to
has to
solve such kind of issues is to distribute it
Mhm.
like around the world. The moment,
Right.
just imagine it's like distribution of those nodes, and then your energy consumption gets distributed.
Yeah,
It's
so
not
your
just
point is
concentrated.
that, because I'm already burning a little bit of energy on my computer
Yeah.
while it's plugged in. So, just use that and not, create a whole nuclear power plant to train an AI model or something.
Correct.
I think that's or a coal fired in this case, right? And
Yeah.
right now they aren't even nuclear, so it's actually much worse. So, okay, that's very cool. So I think we've now come to the end of the hour, and we should probably close. So thank you so much, guys. Prashant, Ranveer, Alex, you are sort of visionaries. You are looking at this problem when it needs to be looked at, and sort of ahead of time. Yeah, AI. I can see now why who owns my AI is a problem. So as in, and there are lots of dimensions to it: compute, data, models, and then also what else is built on top of the models, which is the reasoning part. So each of those layers is being and that's where I think crypto comes in. There's a lot of potential in the crypto economics models as well as cryptographic technology to create more verifiability, which means we can check, right, so as to what's going on, what actually happened, who did what, and understand what really happened, and not have to trust in like five guys and Joe Biden. I'm a Trump supporter, so I'm gonna keep mentioning Joe Biden. So because Trump is pro crypto, so I'm pro Trump. So anyways, so that's good, and really excited about everything you're building. I'm gonna check. I've already been playing with EXO, and I'm gonna check out Spheron's Fiznodes, and Ranveer, thank you so much. Great to see you again. And if there is some toys for me to play with on Witness also, please, I'll check those out as well. Thank you so much, and you have a wonderful day. And very excited about FizzNode launches, guys. Please, if you're on this video, if you're watching this, go install FizzNode, start earning some passive income. That's the commercial. And have a nice day.
Have a nice